How can the DNC help you, and how can we help put pressure on them to help you?
Two things that we need the DNC to do is one, help ensure that we are the only Democrat in this race by leaning the full power of the Democratic Party down on other Democrats. We have raised the most money already. We have built a national conversation about this race. We have proven ourselves, and we need the Democratic Party to have our back in that regard. The second thing is for the DNC chair to take this state seriously. To see the potential that a state of 4 million people is surely easier to flip than Florida. It is surely easier to flip than Wisconsin. It is surely easier to flip than Arizona and some of the other places that they are looking at trying to be competitive. So if you really about what you say about and about the base of the party, which Black folks are the base of the party, this is the second Blackest state in America. And if the Democratic Party is not putting money into Louisiana to the tune of the investment that they made in Georgia, then you're not serious. And so we need the DNC to come in with that level of commitment to take Louisiana serious. And here's the real deal. If the DNC can't flip a state with 4 million people, what is it really?
Smiz, pull this, and we're going to put this on loop, and we're going to play it when Jaime Harrison comes in. And out of your mouth, Gary Chambers, out of your mouth, all of the
Houston
smoke.
is 3 million people. Houston is 3 million people, okay? So you have a state that's almost the size of some major cities in America that are Democratic hubs. And so if the DNC is serious, right, it's Louisiana, Mississippi is it.
That Gary Chambers running for the Senate in Louisiana had a direct message for our next guest, so we played it. And let me welcome him in. He is the chair of the DNC, Mr. Jaime Harrison. Welcome.
Hello, Karen Hunter. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Tanya's here as well.
Hello, Tanya Pinkins. How are you?
She's on delay.
Hey.
So the generator may go out at any time, so I'm just going to let everybody know. So I'm giving space.
I'm good. I can't wait to hear your answer.
Well, I mean, listen, part of my answer is Louisiana, it's time for y'all to do the work that Georgia did, right? These things don't flip overnight. I mean, you got to put in the work on the ground, building the operations, building the network, making sure that you have the activists, doing the voter registration. Yeah, it's good to have the people, but are all the people registered? Now, the DNC has committed already to all of our state parties. We've increased the amount of money that we're sending to our state parties dramatically. Now, $23 million that I have committed to a 57 state and territory strategy to improve what we do in our states, including a red state fund. Now, we have a Democratic governor in Louisiana. We got to make sure that the governor is working with the party to raise the dollars. One thing that a lot of people like to think is that the DNC means it's an automatic piggy bank. Well, guess who has to raise the money? I got to raise the money. We got to get the president to raise the money. And so I don't have a money tree in my backyard. I don't have a candidate recruitment tree in my backyard. It has to be an all of the above comprehensive approach. I appreciate Gary saying, because he raised the most money, then we should just support him. But there's a primaries for reasons, right? Because if I took that strategy in Louisiana, in another state where the Black candidate is not raising the most money, then does that mean then I have to support the white candidate that raises the most? No. In the end of the day, you got to let the people in those communities choose the people who should represent them, right? And moving forward. So listen, I appreciate, Karen, listen, I appreciate all of that. But as soon as we start stepping in one way or the other, then somebody's going to get upset. Somebody's going to be mad. And my best thing is, you know what?
I think your job is not to make sure no one gets upset, is to win. And I think about Kentucky. You had a candidate that would have inspired a whole lot of people to show up to a general election, and y'all backed Amy McGrath.
Well,
who nobody showed up.
Back up. The DNC didn't back anybody.
Okay, well, y'all, you didn't put any money into that?
No, the DNC, and that's another fallacy that people have to understand. DNC does not.
You weren't, and to your credit, you weren't chair then. But
no, I wasn't chair.
But I've watched the Democratic Party seemingly missed the boat on so many potential opportunities, and Louisiana is an opportunity. Gary Chambers is not wrong.
No, I mean, Gary's running a really great, energized campaign. But again, in the end of the day, it's going to be the people in Louisiana who need to make a decision on who the best candidate is to represent them in the United States Senate, right? What the DNC can do is make sure that we invest in the infrastructure of the party. So regardless of who comes out of that primary, when the people in Louisiana make a decision that they're in the best situation possible to win that general election. That's the role of the DNC. The DNC is about building infrastructure in the party, not choosing who the candidate should be in the party. Now, you got other campaign committees like the DSCC, which is the Senate campaign, the DCCC, which is a House campaign, the DLCC that does the legislature. They get into the nitty-gritty of which candidate, but that is not the job of the DNC. The job of the DNC is infrastructure. You know, the voter protection, that database that all campaigns need, because if a campaign had to pay for that by themselves, they would spend millions of dollars just building the campaign apparatus on the data side. But guess who picks up that bill? We do. And many times we only charge, the state parties charge a fraction of the cost, like buying all of these cell phone numbers, getting the commercial data to figure out, well, what perfume do you like? You know, where do you go shop? What type of stuff that help decide the types of things and approaches? All of that stuff is what we do at the DNC. We don't get into the, I'm going to pay for this candidate over that candidate because it's too messy. And so for me, my job is building the infrastructure of the party, making it better so that when we do have a candidate that comes out of the primary, that it's stuff that they don't have to worry about. They can just focus on their race.
Do you only put money in general elections? Do you ever fund primaries?
No.
Jaime Harrison? You don't fund any primaries.
The DNC does not fund primaries, period, point blank.
So why isn't that readily available? Like, why doesn't everyone know that, especially the candidates?
Well, you know, one of the things I would love to do, Karen, is civics is something that we sure need a whole lot more of in terms of understanding how politics run, because there are a lot of people who think certain things, like it's the assumptions. They just assume that this is what happens, but that is not the reality of the situation. That is not the role of the DNC. And most of the time, the DNC really, when you think about who's responsible for which role, the DNC is sort of unique. Our primary function, though, really is on the presidential level, right? We run the presidential primary process, the presidential debate process. And then the state parties work and they do all of the other races there, but we sort of, we do the back end of it in terms of the connective tissue and the support that we give to them. So
is it that?
No, go ahead.
We're talking with Jaime Harrison, chair of the DNC. You can follow him at Harrison Jaime, Jaime, or at the Democrats. Is the Democratic Party broken or is it outdated?
Listen, I think in many ways there are certain things in the Democratic Party that, you know, organizations have cultures. And one of the things that I'm working very hard on is changing the culture of the DNC, because times have changed, demographics have changed, the approaches have changed, and so therefore the organization has to change along with it. But sometimes organizations like the DNC or the RNC take a little longer. You know, it's I like to call it like a battleship. It don't turn as fast as you need it to turn to go into the right direction. It takes a little while longer to change some of the things. And it's partly because to get to the highest point of the DNC and to the highest point of some of these organizations, it's about experience. It's about being around for a long time. Well, things change as you rise up the ranks. You know, I'm one of the youngest people to be a DNC chair. It's usually somebody that's much older, that's been around a lot longer than somebody like me. So, you know, so there's certain things that the DNC still does that's still sort of mired in the 1990s, right? That we got to update our stuff. We got to get more current, and we're working on that. We're working very, very hard on that, and the techniques and the approaches and the making sure that we're in the mediums where people are getting their news now instead of doing it and campaigning in the old ways. But it takes time to get things to change. but I do see improvements. I do see us changing. It's not as quickly as I would like, but the changes are happening.
Is there a legal reason why the Democratic National Party doesn't get involved in primaries?
There is no legal reason. It's just been the precedent over the years. Now, the DSCC and some of our sister committees have in the past have gotten involved in primaries. But the DNC, that has just been as long as I've been a member of the DNC and been involved in party politics,
So it's
does not get
it's just
involved.
a choice, but it isn't working because we're not winning states. So it seems like it's maybe
Tanya,
time for a
the
change.
thing is, it is very tricky. You open that Pandora's box, you got to live with the results, because you may not have a black chair who is the head of the DNC at one point in time. And they said, well, you know what? Tanya Pinkins ain't raising no money. She may be a great candidate, but if she can't raise the money, she can't win, right? So it's a slippery slope in terms of when you open that box. It's better to say, you know what? Let the people in those states make a determination of who is best to represent them. And we make sure that whomever comes out of that decision-making is equipped and has the resources and the infrastructure to be able to run. And that sort of makes sense, right? If you can't win your primary, then why?
Yeah, but we all know that politics is what happens behind closed doors. I mean, what you're publicly doing and what you're privately doing. I mean, we know everybody's pulling strings, making phone calls for people they want to be the front runners. Whatever the public policy is, like, is the Democratic National Party pulling for the candidates that are going to be for equality and democracy?
Well, I would hope so.
People know that that's who they should vote for.
I mean, I would hope any Democrat who's running for office to be a Democrat is for equality and all.
But we know that ain't true because we got Cinnamon and Manchin.
I was just about to say that, Tanya. They're gradations of that, right? There are definitely people on a personal level that I would prefer running and being in certain situations. And I'm always open to giving people advice from my experience in my time running for the United States Senate. I'm always open to that. But as chair, what I try to do is to focus on the holes that I see in the infrastructure of the party. And there are plenty.
So what holes allowed Cinnamon and Manchin to get in as Democrats when they clearly are not?
Well, listen, I mean, you could disagree. You think about Joe Manchin and running for United States Senate. Joe Manchin was a Democratic governor in West Virginia for 2 terms. And then he ran for the United States Senate, had overwhelming support of the Democrats in West Virginia, because I'm assuming they feel as though he represents them and represents their interests. And so therefore they continue to vote for him. Kyrsten Sinema took a seat that was controlled, that was Republican, came out of a very divided primary. I mean, she was a Green Party person at one point in time. But she put up a campaign, came out of the campaign, beat a Republican, and won there now. Now, where the Democrats in those states feel about them, I mean, they're going to have to make a determination at that next race. But I think you will also see other Democrats who will make a determination of whether or not they want to run in the primaries. But in the end of the day, I tell people this: the DNC is not putting money in the primaries for any of these states, because that's not what we do. We will put money into those state parties. And for the record, I can tell you at minimum, Louisiana, because we were specifically talking about them, at minimum, Louisiana will get $360,000 from the DNC in this election cycle. They already get $15,000 a month from the DNC every month, no strings attached, to use for whatever purposes, party building or whatever. And then they also qualify for money through our Red State Fund, so they can apply for grants there through at the DNC, and also through our State Party Innovation Fund, which is a few $1 million, and so they can apply for it there. We're announcing some grants for some state parties as early as the end of the week. So there are resources there available to help there, from voter registration to voter protection and all of that in between.
We're talking with Jaime Harrison, chair of the DNC. Tanya Pickens is here all the way from Sudan, joining us. Do the losses impact your position? Because I feel like it almost seems as if the Democrats as a body, they don't feel to me to be urgent. Like 2022 is right around the corner. And in my opinion, that domino falling really will spell the end of democracy as we know it. Maybe it should. Some could argue maybe it should. Maybe it's time for this settler colony experiment to implode. Maybe it's time for that to happen. But what happens in 2022 is going to determine the future of America. And I don't feel a sense of urgency. You have some candidates that could actually bring some people out to vote. And even if you're not putting money in, I'm sure there are other ways you can put your thumb on the scale. I just don't feel a sense of urgency. I don't feel like there's any strategy and Democratic strategy. You don't have any trolling. Like, you don't even know how to clap back. Like they got that. The Republicans have figured out how to, locally come in, lie. They do all of the, all the things, misinform, disinform, and they do it with boldness. They don't give a damn. And I just feel like the Democrats seem to be waiting to get their asses whooped. And I'm just tired of watching it. And I'm just being honest with you.
Well, look, Karen, we're always honest with each other. Listen, I'm almost the Democratic king of clapback. Like if you just take a look at my Twitter, I mean, just today, I'm all in. You can go through my Twitter right now and look at me. I am all in pushing back on all this crap coming from the other side, because we got the receipts. We just got it. We have to use it, and we have to be bold about it. Part of it is, I think, is in the DNA of most Democrats. And it is, these are people who go to Washington, D.C. or go to state capitals because they want to enact policies to help people in some fashion or form. They are more focused on the policy than the politics. And then most Democrats that you talk to, they will talk all day long about policies and the bills and this, because that's why they get into it. That's why they enjoy it. But some of them don't have sort of that street edge, right? To like, you punch me, you're gonna get punched back, right? They really just want to focus on the policy. But the Republicans, on the other hand, don't give a damn about the policy. It's about power and politics, right? And so therefore they play the political game better than Democrats do, because they're sort of a different DNA, right? They're approaching it in a different way. When Democrats get to Washington, they really just want to get bills done. And that's why you hear people come and they'll give you a whole laundry list. Well, we passed this bill, and we passed that bill, and we passed this bill, and we passed that bill. Republicans don't care about any of that. They really do not care about any of that. All they want is power and access. And if they pass a bill, the only thing they care about is a tax cut. That's the only bill that they really get passionate about, because you know why? Because their donors, that's the thing that really gets their donors energized, right? They get a little more money in their pocket. And so given that different DNA, sometimes it's much more difficult to get that spirit of, you know what, if you punch me, I'm punching you back, right? Don't cross this line. And so again, it's sort of the culture change that has to happen. One of the things that is really, really important for Democrats, I think, going into this fall is that it's going to be okay for us to let people know who we are and what we're fighting for. But let's pick 4 or 5 things that we're going to focus on. Because sometimes we got a whole laundry list of things and we're trying to put all of it in there. And by saying everything, nobody hears anything. Right.
That's what the messaging
yes.
is horrific. You need a 11-year-old TikToker to help y'all develop messaging, just go on out. I mean, I feel like that's what some TikToker who understands how to, who has like 1 million followers, give them 2 things to get out there and let them TikTok their way to
that's it, right?
That's it.
And to have that discipline. But sometimes the message discipline is a hard thing for people who who are smart, who like to think about
who
policies
think they're
and all that.
smart, because smart people are winning, Jaime Harrison. And that's the problem. Y'all think y'all, and I say y'all because I'm divorcing myself from any partisan politics right now. And I just want humanity to
Well,
win.
as long as you
But
vote, you
oh,
can
I vote.
vote.
You know I vote. I vote
I
in
know.
everything. I just somebody just put something under my door yesterday, and I was like, "What office is this?" And now I got to do some research because we apparently have an election coming up in my town. But as I'm sitting here listening, to you, and I appreciate you. I really do appreciate you coming in, giving us your time every month, and having this dialogue with us, because I do think it's important to hear from you. I just need us to win. And when I say us, I don't mean Democrats. I mean people. I need us to win in 2022 and 2024, or there's no point in having a country, period.
Yeah.
So that's how serious it is. And again, I don't feel that urgency coming out of many. Even last night, watching the State of the Union, there was it was a lot of posturing and standing and sitting and clapping and all of that. But the fire, of you have Rashida Tlaib delivering. I'm like, isn't she a Democrat? What are we doing? Why are you giving a speech after the president? It's like, what the hell? Who calls you? You're at the top of the food chain at the DNC, right? Jaime Harrison, you're
the chair. Yeah.
Is there somebody that you answer to? Who do you answer to?
Oh, I answer to the president
of the United States.
Of the United States. He
Okay.
is the leader of our party. And so I answer to him.
That's the problem. Okay. All right. When you give out money, I'm sorry, go ahead, Tanya.
Does he listen to you?
Well, he does. I just had lunch with him about 2 weeks ago at the White House, where we got an opportunity to talk. And he told me, he said, we're going to be all in. He's going all over the country. He's going to talk about the issues that are important. He's going to go and support all of our candidates. We've already made huge commitments to our Senate candidates and our House candidates and our gubernatorial candidates. We're putting $15 million into House and Senate campaigns. So we're putting another, and that's outside of some of the other stuff that we're already doing. We're putting millions into
I'm
governor's
confused
races.
now. You just said you can't get into primaries.
No,
I'm
but
confused. How you committing to people if their primaries are still
No,
happening?
to the Senate campaign committee.
These aren't primary candidates.
Yeah, it's not primary candidates. It's for the Senate campaign committee, the House campaign committee, the governor's campaign committees. So, and their efforts to support their candidates as they come out of the primary into the general. So we don't, again, the DNC is not, we are helping them build their organizations and have their strength so that they can support their candidates once they get out of their primaries.
How do you follow the money? We're talking with Jaime Harrison, DNC chair. You said $360,000 to Louisiana during their general election for the Senate. Or is that for every race? Is that for every race in Louisiana?
So what we're doing is we're sending that money directly into the state party, and then the state party decides what they utilize that money for in terms of where they see the need. Now they can also apply for grants, Karen, for specific projects. So we're going to be announcing tomorrow or Friday. We're announcing several grants to some state parties, which will pay for their voter protection director for the year, or will pay for an organizing director or several organizers for communities of color for the year, or a data director, or somebody who handles the social media, right? And the outreach efforts. It all depends on what we try to do is not to be heavy-handed with our state parties because they're on the ground and they know what their need is, but we try to, provide a proposal, and then we provide grant money in order to help them for whatever that initiative may be.